Hey guys, I want to talk to you a little bit about the three T's: trauma, toxins, and thoughts. It's important to be able to discuss these with your patients so that they can understand how they get subluxated in the first place. Trauma, can either be all at once or over time. So, a car accident, falling down a flight of stairs, lifting a weight that's too heavy for you, or over time, of course, things like sitting at a computer for long hours, doing something repetitiously like adjusting, bending over all day. So the trauma can be either all at once or over time. Thoughts is the same thing. I mean, you can have a stressful thought, you can have a stressful day, and you can have a stressful month. The reality is that it can either come all at once, like a death in the family, or a series of little things. You ever just have one of those days where things just seem to keep adding up and piling up, and there doesn't seem to be an end to it. And then the other thing is chemical stress, right? So you could have a massively chemical stressful day like food poisoning, or for most people, the major source is chronic, ongoing sources of chemical stress like the bad food that you eat, drugs that your patients take, the bad air that you breathe, alcohol, like whatever it is, it can be over time. But here's the key. People need to understand that the three T's don't cause subluxation. It's the inability to adapt to the three T's that causes subluxation. It's only when the stress is outside your body's capacity for adaptation that you actually break down. So if I wanted to bench press 300 pounds, I know it looks like I could easily, but let's pretend that I couldn't. If I wanted to, and I asked you, how do I get there? You would say, I would work at it. I could work out over time so that over time I'm able to push more and more and more to increase my internal resistive capacity. See, BJ talked all the time about resistance, the internal resistive capacity and the external destructive stressors. And the external destructive stressors, if your internal resistive capacity is greater than them, then you have this thing that we call health, that we call like the flourishment of health. And BJ talked all the time about that, and I think sometimes it gets lost in the translation when we're talking to patients saying, well, if you do this, it's always going to be bad. If you sit at a desk, it's always going to be bad. If you run too much, it's always going to be bad. If you lift weights, it's always going to be bad. And we have these people who are afraid to do anything. The second that they start to understand that they have the freedom to choose, that they can actually do something regularly to help change their body to increase its internal resistive capacity, that gives them the ticket and the freedom to make choices going forwards that can change their life. See, when we talk to chiropractic patients, we don't want to scare them into lifetime care. That's not what it is. We want to give them the tools to take care of themselves for their whole life. And if they get into a case of subluxation, we want to check them for that, adjust them if necessary, and free them from the effects of chronic subluxation. Chronic subluxation is subluxation that stays and exists there over time and creates chronic degenerative patterns. That brings me to things like being able to describe the corrective care process, which we're going to do in the next video. Okay, guys? So for this week, what I want you to do is think about how are you talking to your patients about subluxation, about the three T's? How are you teaching them about what they can do to help themselves with the intention of increasing their internal resistance? And thirdly, and most authentically, is what are you doing? Are you exercising enough? Are you eating healthy enough? Are you taking time in the day to set your mind for the day, to clear your, not clear your mind, but prepare your mind for the warfare that'll go through? That might mean getting up, reading the green books, reading the Bible, doing some quiet time, meditation, time outside in nature, whatever you need. Are you doing those? And if not, I ask you, how could you ever expect your patients to? Talk to you next week.